right, but we are not talking today about that poem. I guess we've moved past it. We're talking about another issue today, and that issue is Gabrielle and what is happening in the wake of Cyclone Gabrielle. And we have all seen the pictures on the television, and we've all seen, particularly in places like the Esk Valley, the devastation that has been wrought. And we're going to have some conversations with various people today about recovery, about fixing infrastructure in Hawke's Bay and on the East Cape, and how that is literally going to impact us when we go to the supermarket of a week, because it is going to have an impact, and the impact is going to be, in some cases, on our wallets. But think for a moment, 11 people died in that event. It wasn't a climate change event. We've well established that with Ian Wishart. But it was an event that's going to have ramifications. And there are a whole lot of people who run businesses, and particularly agricultural businesses, who have been trying to clean out the silt, put their fences back up again, restock, and get back to that fundamental backbone of New Zealand, buying some food and selling some food and keeping this country running. But I have increasingly been hearing stories, and do we have them up yet? Okay, we're going to keep trying. I've increasingly been hearing that people in Hawke's Bay in particular are frustrated, totally frustrated, by the hoops they're having to jump through to get their farms back and operating again, or to recover from this weather event. Not a climate change event, it's a weather event. It wasn't particularly unusual in terms of its severity or its rainfall. NIWA has been making that up for the Green Party for you and for Greenpeace for you. So we are actually sitting here at the moment waiting for the head of Federated Farmers, Andrew Hoggard, who issued a call yesterday for councils and authorities in Gabrielle-affected areas to basically cut the red tape that is holding back a whole lot of people. And it was funny. I was working on the story yesterday. I thought, is this all anecdotes? Is this people, being victims? No. And then I see Fed farmers saying this is seriously a real issue. And we're just waiting now for Andrew Hoggard to come on the line. And we said he was good. He's probably out milking the flipping cows. We'll give him another crack. We'll give him another crack, Ben, because this is an important story. Also this morning, I'm going to say we're going to talk to Eric Crampton from the New Zealand Initiative. And I talked about this yesterday, but doesn't it strike you that we're in an issue, we're in a kind of situation, and clearly game is back on for the election. National cannot sleepwalk to victory anymore. The carefully calculated replacement of Jacinda Ardern with Chris Hipkins has had a big impact on the polls. We saw that in the TVNZ poll last night. And how do you keep a roll going if you're the Labour Party? Well, you just give people money. It's good old-fashioned pork barrel politics, and we're going to talk to Eric Crampton from the New Zealand Initiative about the macro picture of this sort of economics. All right, Andrew Hoggard from Federated Farmers is joining us now. Andrew, thanks for coming on the platform, mate. You put out a statement yesterday. Can you give people a feel of what you said yesterday to local authorities and other people in the Hawke's Bay?
Yeah, basically it was that we need regional councils to be a little bit more pragmatic around, just letting farmers get on, in simple terms, letting farmers get on with clearing farms up, getting things back working. There's enough work on. We don't need time filling in paperwork and waiting for consents. Thankfully, the government is moving on what are we calling it? A sort of emergency legislation to sort of, like they did after Kaikoura earthquake, to sort of put diversions in place for the RMA so that farmers can just get on with it.
Andrew, what I was hearing late last week and over the weekend was that people whose farms have been wiped out or covered in silt and have lost fences and stuff were being told they couldn't do anything to remediate the damage from Gabrielle unless they got resource consent.
Yeah, Yeah, and that's exactly what we want to avoid.
But can I just check first, that actually has been the case? You got some bunch of guys with a clipboard and white coats from the council saying, you can't clean up your farm, you don't have resource consent.
I think certainly I haven't got proof myself of individual cases, but I've certainly heard secondhand of people being told that they're not allowed to burn piles of debris, all these massive piles of logs you see, and that, various other things.
They've got to separate tantalised fence posts from chop from... These are the same stories I've been hearing.
Yeah. Basically, they just need to pile it up, throw some diesel on it, and chuck a match in there, quite frankly. So that's sort of, we just want people to be, in a pragmatic way. There's been enough mess and damage. The quicker we can get things re-established and back to normal, the quicker not only farms can rebound, but nature can rebound. For example, in my river, we've got 2 sections where the riverbank's been, all the trees planted against it have been ripped away, and now it's sort of exposed riverbank. So every time the river's going to lift, I'm going to have more dirt drop in, and so that's more sediment that's going to constantly be going into the waterway. And so... What's the best thing you can do there is have a riparian strip, plant some trees, or... Yeah, but first of all, we've got to get a bulldozer in, push some of the gravel across the river, to up against our bank to sort of protect it. Then we'll get the trees in, plant it off. But now, Andrew, can you do that without some bean counter from the council turning up and ticking a whole lot of boxes for you? Right now, no, I don't think I'm allowed to do that. But I probably wasn't going to ask permission anyway. But I think, that's the attitude, Andrew. I think, these. My understanding is these changes that are coming through will enable people to get on with it and get that stuff done. Because, as soon as I can get that bank stabilised and stop that, not only am I not losing land, but that constant drop of riverbank into the river creates sedimentation, which is bad for aquatic life. So, there'll be a bit of disturbance getting things straightened up, but the long term is the bank's stabilised, things can return to normal. Not only can my farm bounce back and other farmers' farms bounce back, but nature can bounce back as well. All right. So, and you've had an indication from government on this issue in a broader sense that, oh gosh, you don't have to get resource consent to just clean up your farm or burn some stuff that's been dumped on your farm. Have you got an indication from them that they are happy to pass that legislation? I think it's... I just got a text message before from the staff asking whether I'd be free this afternoon because there might be emergency legislation put in front of a select committee, and so... Oh wow, Andrew, that's good news. That's moving flipping fast. It's also a bit... I got to say, I scratch my head. I'm not a farmer, Andrew, but maybe it's an indication that you've got to do that. How tied up we've become in red tape in our primary production sector. I mean, that you can't just clean up after a flood, man. Yeah, and this is, even, I guess, with the new replacement the current legislation's frustrating enough, but the new legislation is potentially going to be even worse. So... I've got big concerns for the future as well. All right. Well, you're talking about the new Resource Management Act legislation that's before Parliament at the moment, right? Yeah. Well, look, we covered this yesterday with the Taxpayers Union. And aside from the impact it might have on the farming community, it's that's co-governance and unelected co-governance and centralisation of resource management strategy, in fact, national strategy on resource management up the wazoo. That's really quite a drastic piece. I mean, it makes, to be honest, Three Waters look like a walk in the park, doesn't it? Yeah, it does, and we've been sort of banging on about it for quite a while with our concerns, and Yeah, I don't think it's till recently that everyone's sort of starting to slowly get their heads around, actually, this is a bit more concerning than Three Waters is. And
Wow.
Yeah, and I mean, from what we've heard from, in our submission, we put forward that basically the bill should be withdrawn and go back to the drawing boards. I don't think anyone submitted in favour of it, which is pretty damning as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that's been pushed through by the Minister for the Environment, David Parker. We seem to have a government right now, Andrew, that is going, as I say, from woke to bloke, that is prepared to throw anything unpopular in the dumpster and set it alight, a bit like cleaning up your farm. Labor seem to be doing the same thing. Do you have any indication, given the deep concerns now being raised about the new Resource Management Act and particularly the co-governance in it and the centralisation of power away from, I guess, locals, basically, and locally elected people, do you have any indication on that issue that you might get some movement from the government because they've said they're committed to pass this before the election?
No, not at this stage. We did have a meeting last week, but there wasn't really time to cover that. My gut feel is until the wider public gets some understanding around this and people are able to see some simple and easy to understand examples of how this is going to make life difficulter, then you're probably not going to see much movement from the government. And to be fair, there's probably a whole bunch of government MPs that also probably don't understand some of the concerns with this as well.
Yeah, and I know the lobbying on this hasn't been new, but, the Stop Three Waters campaign was pretty big. But the fact is, despite rolling back a whole lot of other unpopular policies, the government hasn't stopped Three Waters, has it? Labor hasn't stopped Three Waters.
It's just delayed.
And it's just delayed it, and I think this is bigger than Three Waters. So really, what are your chances of getting this rolled back before the election?
It'll be pretty challenging, I dare say, but I think if more and more people become aware of the concerns and take note of the fact that, so many people submitted against this, including a chief environment court judge submitted against it. Yeah. So, there's not a lot of fans out there of this legislation. And I think, once, it's a case of needing to build that same level of, campaign or noise around this as there was with Three Waters, to have any chance of...
Well, as I observed, though, Andrew, for all the noise, for all the fire and fury around Three Waters, it's still there, mate.
Yeah, exactly.
They've just stopped talking about it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Andrew, and so, look, I'm not going to say you heard it here first, but there is the possibility of emergency legislation to clean up the RMA, so basically the bean counters and the pen pushers don't get in the way of people who want to get their properties cleaned up and productive again in Gabrielle-affected areas.
Yeah, that's my understanding, that it'll be a legislation similar to what we had, I think, after the Christchurch quake and also after the Kaikoura earthquake that sort of suspended or fast-tracked some of the RMA stuff that just enabled people to get on with life.
So, and get on with the bloody job. That's a very Kiwi solution. Andrew, I thank you at relatively short notice for popping up this morning. That's really, really interesting stuff. And good luck with the RMA campaign too. That is Andrew Hoggard, the boss, chief honcho, chief shepherd, chief milker of Federated Farmers, and an issue I've been looking at. So you heard it here first, possibly today even, emergency legislation to stop red tape, stopping people and stopping people in the primary sector from cleaning up and getting on with producing food and produce in the Hawke's Bay and the East Cape following, and I imagine maybe two up north, following subtropical storm, not climate change weather event, Gabrielle. Really interesting what is happening there. And we're going to, after 7:30, we're going to talk to Kirsten Wise. She's the Mayor of Napier. And just got a feel for how recovery is, how that area is after what was a pretty severe, though I stress, given our interviews with Ian Wishart and Philip Duncan from Weatherwatch, not a climate change event, just a weather event. And actually not the most severe we've ever had, not outside the norms of our actual records if NIWA could be bothered keeping actual and accurate records.